Be Frank Network. Content on this production is for entertainment and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice, nor is it intended to substitute medical treatment or diagnosis. Seek medical help if you believe that you are suffering from a mental illness or are a threat to yourself or others. By using any or all of the information provided, you do so at your own risk. Any application of the material is at the listener's discretion and is his or her sole responsibility.
Hey everybody, Doc Bryan here, and welcome to Doc Talks, where we talk about people's troubles, trials, tribulations, and hopefully triumphs of life. Today I have with me Neil Gray. Neil, it's good to have you here with us, and I'm glad that you could pencil me in your busy day. So Brad is your cousin, so I met you through Brad as a Facebook friend, and Brad was like, he needs a lot of help. And I was like, okay. So then we got to talking. I think we got in a few theological conversations. But the first time we met in person was a Saturday morning, or actually a Friday night, when I came and looked at some of your plumbing, you know, because everybody knows I'm a plumber, right? Yeah. And so we worked all of that out together, got it done. Hopefully you've patched the hole so nobody could see my
it looks perfect now.
My redneck in engineering there. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were raised. Were you raised here in Little Rock, or tell us a little about growing up?
So I grew up in Southwest Little Rock, Landmark. It's out towards East End in that area. I had a pretty normal childhood. Mom, dad, brother. Grew up in church. We had a little couple acres off the road where my grandparents lived, right down the trail from me. My brother, when he grew up, he lived up on the road. I mean, we were just all real close-knit family right off the road. And so I grew up in church, grew up right down the road going to school. I mean, everything went pretty normal childhood up until college, somewhere around there.
Okay, so you had a younger brother, older brother?
Older brother, 4 years older.
All right. And so now your dad is an avid hunter, fisherman, or is that your uncle?
That's
okay, because I get all of you.
Brad's dad.
I get all of you mixed up.
Yeah. No, Brad's whole side of his family is avid hunters. My dad was definitely an avid fisherman. Okay, but yeah, no, they're always in the deer woods.
Okay, so are you the hunter or the fisherman or the stay out of trouble?
Yeah, really, I mean, I'll fish here and there. Actually, Brad and Uncle Ronnie, his dad, are supposed to take me to the deer woods for the first time. I've actually never been to the deer woods. I do a lot of dove hunting with some buddies, but that's.
Do you do any duck hunting here?
I have never actually been duck hunting either.
I haven't either, but it's kind of like golf. It's too expensive to enjoy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. So you graduated, guess, high school, moved into college. Where did you go to college at?
I started at UCA.
Okay.
Yeah.
I started at Arkansas Tech, so we would mock the UCA fight song to sing "UCA sucks." Da 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 da. Yeah. So did you finish college there?
No. I went to UCA, to Pulaski Tech. Went to UALR. I actually finished at UALR.
Okay.
I finished. Yeah.
And you have a degree in
advertising and marketing.
Okay. And that's what you do now, is you're a salesman for
Pella.
For Pella.
Yeah.
And if they want to pay us for that plug, we'll
sure,
be
I'm
more
sure
than
they
happy.
will. I'll send the bill.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, we could plug Brad a little bit, but I know he's not going to pay anything to us for that.
Brad he's a social media entrepreneur. Yeah. He knows how to use the free resources available to him.
That just kind of fits his style, though.
Yeah.
So you said everything was normal until you kind of got into college. So tell me a little bit about what happened there.
So I played basketball my whole life and baseball. My dad coached me my whole life. It was actually in between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college. I was playing in a semi-league or semi-pro league in downtown Little Rock basketball. Went up for a layup before the game, just layup drills before the game. Went up for a layup, and when I landed, I couldn't breathe. Something took my breath away, and I could feel something was really wrong. And my dad was there, so I went over there and got him, and he drove me home. And I was just holding myself up off the seat the whole way. I couldn't put any pressure on my back, and When I got home, he drugged me out of the car. My legs just almost went completely numb and paralyzed, and found out that I had herniated a disc in my back. So that's
just
when
from
everything
landing,
changed.
just from landing.
Yeah, the doctor said that, from working out my whole life and playing basketball and all this, he said it was inevitable. Like at some point that was going to herniate.
So you have just proven to the listeners that if you don't work out and you don't play basketball and you sit around and fat and sassy like me, that you'll live longer.
That was my intent.
And less pain.
Yeah, that was my intent.
Yeah. So did you have to have surgery or anything like that?
Yep. I had actually ended up having 2 back surgeries. After the first one, it was worse. Like the scar tissue started wrapping around everything. The disc reherniated, and a cyst developed on my sciatic nerve where the disc was pushing. So literally, like everything that could possibly go wrong with the surgery went wrong, and it was miserable. So 6 months after that, he got me back in for a second surgery, and the second surgery did the trick. I mean, it worked.
Okay. So it was one of those things where it only moved when you hurt.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
So, but you were in between high school and college. So did you just kind of spend that summer recuperating, or did you have to miss a semester of college, or?
Yeah, I think I missed my second semester of college. So I moved up to UCA, moved out of the house for the first time right after my first surgery. So I was still in quite a bit of pain there, but then I came back, had my second surgery. I think I ended up taking a semester off, but then moved back out there after that.
Okay. So then you said the second surgery did the trick. Did that alleviate all the pain? Physical therapy helped with that?
Yeah. I did physical therapy for, a few months after that to strengthen the muscles. But yeah, after that, I mean, I was fine. It completely took the pain away.
Okay. So then moving into college, what happened there that really kind of curved your life?
So I didn't tell the doctor that it alleviated my pain. I told him that I was still in a ton of pain. And up until my back surgery, playing basketball in high school, growing up the way I did, if you asked me, I wouldn't have told you that I'd lacked anything. I was content and happy. I had a bright future ahead of me. But when I woke up in the hospital with that morphine pump in my arm, like I found what I had been missing. Like I knew that I was in love, and this is what I needed. So after that surgery, he gave me an unlimited prescription of painkillers, and it said unlimited refills on the bottom. This was back in 2000, so the regulation wasn't there, and it was. I refilled that pain pill bottle 5 times in 1 month. 90 count pain pills 5 times in 1 month. It's the same pharmacy. They never batted an eye. For 4 years, I was telling the doctor that it was still killing me. My back was hurting. I kept going back for appointments and all this, and he just kept feeding me painkillers till finally he realized after about 4 years that I was lying to him, and he cut me off after that.
Yeah, because it kind of really is difficult to be able to tell if somebody's actually in pain or not,
Sure.
Especially when it comes to the spine. You said in that was it the second surgery where you got the morphine that you just really...
No, it was the first one. Yeah, first surgery. I was hooked pretty much immediately.
Okay. Had you had addiction issues before, or something where you just had to have it?
No.
Whether it was substance or activity, where you just had to do it?
Possibly. I was 18 or 19 when I hurt myself. So up until that point, I think I'd smoked a few cigarettes, drinking with some buddies, on the weekends in high school, but no, there was no indication that I was just gonna grab onto something and never let go.
Right. Now, morphine, to me, it just makes me sick. I mean, I wouldn't take it if it was given to me. It just, and with some people, it really kind of takes you into this euphoric land. Is that what it did for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't, morphine was just an introduction to it, but, I got into oxycodone and the OxyContin, hydrocodones. Those were my drug of choice. And of course, that's what I was prescribed after that.
So when you were cut off from the doctor, what happened?
I was scared to death. First time in my life, I felt, just utter fear. I had to figure out a way, and so I did. I started dealing drugs. I'd met, of course, a ton of people who liked them as well throughout my 4 years. And so I had a ton of connections by then. So I started dealing drugs. I had a buddy who worked at a pharmacy, and he was also an addict. And so we worked out a deal, and, by the time the DEA caught up to us, which was, I think, about 2.5 years after we started, we had stolen something like 60,000 painkillers from the pharmacy and several thousand Xanax and just a whole bunch of narcotics from that pharmacy.
So how do you know that you have this problem and then meet other people and it become kind of recreational with you still really needing it? How does that, like, how do you come to somebody and say, hey, I've got some pain medicine and it really makes me feel good. Do you want one?
Right.
I mean, is it really that simple?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Especially when we first started, because nobody knew the dangers of it. We were kids and, I had a bunch of painkillers and people would come over to parties and I'd start handing them out, just passing them out to people. And there would be some people who, oh yeah, man, I'll get some more of those. And then people that would just blow my mind would, say they stay the night, they would leave in the morning and they would just leave without asking me for more of them. And that blew my mind. Like, how do you not want more of these, man?
Right.
Because I'd pass them out,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just, that always blew my mind as how does somebody would just leave with not asking for more?
Right. And so at that point in time when you were partying, had you come to a point of where you tried to get off of it and you experienced the DTs and that's why you wanted more? Or was it more of just, I want more of that feeling?
So my addiction lasted almost 19 years. For the first, I'd say, half a decade.
Now, you're not old enough to have had an addiction.
I am.
Since 18.
I'm 40. Yeah.
Well, you look younger than me, and I'm 37. So
yeah. All right. Well, yeah, no.
Maybe I need to take some painkillers.
There you go.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, sit around, get fat and happy, and take some painkillers.
Yeah.
That's my lessons in life.
Mm-hmm. Were you coming off the DTs and then having to get back on, or were you just wanting that euphoric state? Yeah.
So for the first several years, it was just fun. I mean, that was it. So I don't remember actually feeling withdrawal because, and again, I had unlimited pain pills for 4 years. I never had withdrawals because I never didn't have them. So I mean, I would literally it escalated so quickly that. I mean, right off the bat, within a couple of weeks of getting those painkillers and moving up to college, I was taking, it says take 2 to 4 every 4 to 6 hours. I was taking 10 or 15 of them every hour or two. And then I would wake up in the middle of the night and take a handful of them, like go to pee in the middle of the night. I'd just take a handful and go back to sleep. I wouldn't feel them. I just had them. So why not? And it was like that for at least 4 years. I had them so I could take as many as I wanted. After that, I had my buddy that worked at the pharmacy. So I had as many as I wanted and never ran out again. And so for, 6 or 7 years, it was just fun. It was just a ton of fun. And I never really had the bad parts of it. But after the DEA popped him and I had to figure out other ways to do it. And then it got, I ended up kind of in the streets more, I became an actual drug dealer where I was dealing with a ton of other drug dealers and it just became much more dangerous. And then, those are the times when I started running out of stuff and I'd have to figure out a way. And then I realized just how much trouble I was in because that detox, man, it's no joke. I mean, you're already addicted enough in your head, even if there was no physical symptoms, it's a terribly difficult thing to break. But man, when you wake up every morning and you just have these intense flu symptoms come over you and that there's a way to fix this, there's a way not to be sick and you're going to do just about anything you have to do it. And that's kind of where I was.
Right. I had a friend in high school. We were really good friends. He played basketball too. And when I moved back from North Carolina, his mom called me, wanted me to come talk to him that he was hooked on painkillers. And he had been going to a Suboxone clinic, going through that kind of treatment, and it wasn't working. So I'd talked him into going to rehab, which he had never gone to rehab before. He's just doing the Suboxone. He said, yes, I will go to rehab, but I need to go by my grandmother's house because I've got these pair of shoes or whatever that I wanted. Well, on the way to the rehab, I noticed that he was high. He had gone to his grandmother's, gotten to her stash of pain pills. And I'm like, dude, you just agreed that you needed help. And I was taking you and you had me detour so that you could get pain medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the process there? I mean, from your point of view, and I'll say this, I can't understand because I've never dealt with this myself.
Sure.
So what is the thought process there?
So first of all, man, listen, I've been clean for about 4 years now. And even me, man, I still work with a lot of ministries and guys that are in addiction. And even me, I'm like, dude, just stop. Like, just stop doing that. What are you doing? You're ruining your life. And like, I was just there. And so I understand it's hard to understand for people. But it has such a grip on you. And when you're in it, it's it. Like, that's it. That's all your life is about. It's can I get my medicine first? Can I keep from getting sick? And then I'll figure out everything else. Then I'll figure out my family. Then I'll figure out my job. But it is first in everything. There's nothing that comes before that, especially once you get that far down the road, man, where you've been doing it long enough and your brain is just is locked into it. That you've created these pathways in your brain that tell you that this is normal. This is what you have to do first. And then you can live your life after that. So when you're taking your buddy to rehab, he's thinking my life is over. So, I've only got a few more hours before I'm done. So I got to get something in me before that. I mean, that's all he's thinking.
Yeah. Now, have you been into rehab, or did you do some kind of medical detox, or how did that all transpire for you?
No, so I went to the ranch, Renewal Ranch in Conway. So it's a year-long faith-based recovery facility where they take you out of the world and they pop you on this campus for the first
at the ranch.
Yeah, at the ranch. Yeah, on a ranch, basically. Yeah. And it's for 6 months. You only see your family on Saturdays for a couple hours on Saturdays. Other than that, you were stuck there. I had never done rehab. I was exceptionally good at hiding everything. Even when I was stealing from my parents and my wife and pawning all their stuff. Like, it was a full-time job. I worked very hard at keeping myself where I wasn't sick all the time, but also keeping it hidden enough to where they wouldn't intervene and make me go to rehab or make me, just.
So did your wife and parents know you were addicted at that point?
Yeah, they did. I kept it from my wife. I mean, she was with me the whole time. So we've been together 17 years, I think, and we've been married for 11 years. Actually, on Saturday, it was 11 years. She always thought for the longest, he likes to party, he likes to have a good time. But, she had no idea it was that big of a problem. About 5 years before I got clean, so the last 5 years of my addiction, she knew like it was getting really bad. She found a Discover credit card bill that I ran up like $8,000 in cash advances. And that's when she realized that, well, this is much worse than I thought it was. And so for the last 5 years, my addiction in our marriage was tough, man. It was just me lying all the time and her knowing I was lying, but not wanting to leave or holding out hope. And then she got pregnant, and we got pregnant with the twins, and she was just stuck.
Who are the cutest little kids, by the way.
Yeah, they're wild. They're cute, but they're wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, she got pregnant with them, and then she was just stuck, in her head and in mine. I'm sure I used it to keep her there. I knew that she would stay now. Towards the end, man, she'd catch me using or lying or stealing, or she would find some drugs, or she would catch me, in some kind of big lie. And depending on the night or the day, she would scream at me or cry or try and tell me to leave or beg me to just let her go. And man, it got to the point where I'd heard it enough, and I was already so ashamed of myself and so sick of my life. And I would just stand there while she would cry with just this blank look on my face, and I would just watch her cry, and I couldn't feel anything anymore. I was just done with everything. I was so sick of my life.
So you were basically numb to any emotion,
Yeah.
any outside.
Oh, absolutely.
So would those times where you would you stop for a moment and say, if I do this, my wife's going to find out and then she's going to be mad? Was there ever that guilt and shame that came in there?
Every day. Yeah. I mean, when I go to bed every night, I would say, all right, tomorrow I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I'm going to fix this. I'm not going to get high tomorrow. Whatever it is, I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to hurt anybody else. But I knew I would. And I mean, what addiction does is it makes you, it bullies you. Like you bully yourself. So like I wanted so bad for this to be over with, and I didn't want to do this anymore. But at the same time, like, I knew what I was about to do tomorrow, and I hated myself for it. I mean, I hated it, and I knew I was about to let everybody down again. And I was just so sick of myself, but I was so scared of what I would do next. As me, who was deep in there somewhere, the actual real me, knew that I was about to do something terrible, but I didn't want to anymore. I was sick of it. I wanted to do right, but I knew I wouldn't allow that.
Going to Renewal Ranch. Now, I've had a little bit of contact with that ministry, but not a whole lot. But from looking at their guidelines, they are tremendously strict as to where I had a client once that went to an inpatient rehab in Searcy, and I won't call the name because there's only one there. So
I know what it is.
And so he was in there for he was there for the detox part. And I went and saw him, and he was high as a kite. And I'm going, bro, where are you getting drugs at? And he was like, I can get them here.
Yeah.
And I'm going, in a rehab center? And so what is broken with that side of the system that you can still have access there?
Man, it's the same thing in prisons. In prisons, you can find drug dealers all day. NA was kind of the same situation for me. Narcotics Anonymous, but I always called it new acquaintances. That's really all it was. There's new drug dealers that I would meet, people who, on one night would come and really had it in their head. I'm going to get clean. This is going to work. I'm going to get out of this life. And but at the same time, they're coming in with 20 other people who are doing the exact same thing. And the next night, who knows what they're going to be thinking? So now we get to know each other, and we got all new connections now.
Right. I had a church member one time that was alcoholic and went to AA, and he said, "Man, going to AA just makes me want to drink." Hearing all of these stories from all these other people just made me want to get drunk.
Yeah.
Now, typically with addiction, painkillers, whether it be painkillers, whether it be alcohol, whether it be pornography, whatever that addiction is, typically we are feeding that to ourselves to repress something else. Was there at some point where you noticed that it was a repression, or was it just that you got hooked on that feeling?
Well, both. It was hooked. I was hooked for the first good while of it, but once you live that life for long enough, you start letting people down, you start lying to people, breaking people's hearts. This shame is overwhelming. So yeah, you have to do something to numb that pain, numb that shame and guilt that you feel. And, because you feel so much shame and guilt that you don't want to feel that for, all the time, and you will. So you just tell yourself, this is the kind of person you are now. This is who I am now. I'm doing what I have to do. They should understand this. And it's not my fault.
Because to you, in some way, as the addict, it's no more different than somebody taking a Tylenol because they have a headache.
Right.
I need to take this so that I can be normal of who I am.
Yeah, that's exactly what you hear, man. I got to take this so I can be normal. I got to take this so that I can get through the day, so that I can function normally. Because if I don't have this, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to be sick, and I'm going to screw up the whole day. I'm going to screw up my job. So I have to get high to do my job today.
So how were you able to go to school and be productive while being high?
Well, that's the only time I could be productive was when I was high. After a little bit, that was it. So, like I said, I had a ton of pain pills, unlimited. So it would have been different if I was running out all the time and had to fend for myself. But I was fed them from the doctor while I was at school.
And from what I understand, thankfully, at no point during that were you incarcerated or anything like that for selling.
No.
Or distributing or
no,
even possessing.
No. I committed probably several thousand felonies, in those 19 years. But I was blessed, unbelievably so. But
that is not a confession to any one felony.
No.
That may
right,
be
I'm
still
not
within the limits of statutation.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah. So typically there would be a doctor-client privilege here, but since this is on a
right.
podcast, I don't think that works.
Yeah,
that way.
I was just kidding anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Your name really isn't Neil Gray,
right.
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I definitely don't work for the company I named earlier.
Yeah, it was Bella, right?
Yeah, Bella.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
And they do roofs and stuff,
right? Yeah.
So why do you think that you were able to get away with it without getting caught?
I mean, like I said, man, pure luck, first of all, and for a while. For a while, it was legal because I was given these pain pills. It was a prescription. But after that, man, the grace of God, I mean, I really don't know. I mean, because I'd seen all my buddies around me were getting caught, going to jail, and it's not it's not like I was careful. I was as reckless as they come, and even my buddies, of course, that had been caught before would be riding with me like, dude, you've got to slow down, or dude, you can't take that with you, and I was like, I'm fine, man, it's no big deal. So I wasn't careful. I just never got popped.
What was it like at the point where the doctor came to you and said, Neil, you can't have this much anymore? Did he say, I think you've got a problem and maybe you need treatment, or was it just, I'm not going to give this to you anymore?
No, it was, I'm going to write your prescription for Darvocets, which were about half the strength. And then I'm cutting you off. I'm not giving you anymore. And I mean, he didn't take time to explain it or break it to me gently. That was it. So he gave me one little prescription of those to wean myself off of my 4 years long addiction. And, I should have been good after that, but somehow I wasn't.
So was that kind of during the time where the push of the war on drugs started then to really take effect and doctors were beginning to be concerned? Yeah,
there started to be a lot more heavily regulated use of pharmaceuticals around that time. And it wasn't difficult to find them still, because I'd known, got to know a lot of people who got steady prescriptions of them, met a lot of old people that, poor old people that didn't want to take them but needed money. And so that worked out well for me. It wasn't really as difficult, but it wasn't as consistent as just having my own prescription.
Right. So tell me about the day that you said, okay, I need help.
Never once.
Never once.
Nope. I didn't. I had it all under control. And by the time it got out of control, I was so full of shame and guilt. I had 18-month-old babies, twins at home, had an amazing wife, and never done anything but good by me. Mom and dad saying, everything, man. I got to the point where I couldn't change. I tried to go get the Suboxone route that you mentioned earlier. I went to a doctor to get that, and I tried several things. I tried NA and all this, and so I knew I had a problem, but I never thought like I can't handle it. Eventually I'll get past this. But then I got to the point where I guess it sunk in that I couldn't get past this, that it wasn't going to work. And I figured to myself, I tried NA, I tried this doctor route, I've tried these other things to try and get clean, and I can't. And I'm sick of letting my family down. And so I ended up trying to take my life a couple times. Instead, God threw me in a jail cell. I got arrested, of all things, for shoplifting, because towards the end I got on meth as well. One of the smartest things I'd ever done was decide to get off of painkillers by starting to use meth instead. I'd heard other people try this,
which isn't uncommon.
Right? No, not at all. And so when I tried meth, I realized that I wasn't feeling the detox symptoms as bad from opiates. So it actually worked. I got off of opiates and I started doing meth pretty much full time, several times a day, for probably about 2 months. And then I just brought the pain pills back into the fold, and I was doing both of them all the time, several times a day. So once I started doing meth, man, I started shoplifting, because it makes you crazy. And I started shoplifting every store. I got to have a pocket full of cash, and I'd walk into a store and like, I'm going to steal something, whatever it is, I'm going to put something in my pocket and leave out of here. And I have no idea why, but I never went anywhere without stealing something, shoplifting.
So what was the thing you stole when you got caught?
It was a scale. I broke my wife's scale in the bathroom like a month or so before. And I was wearing basically this, just a t-shirt and jeans. And I went to Kohl's, and come to find out.
The worst place to go shoplifting.
Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that but me. And every time I tell that story, like, dude, why did you steal from Kohl's? You stupid. Mm-hmm. And I just went in there and I traded my shoes. I took some old hard black penny loafers and traded those in for a new pair of their shoes, and just put mine in their box and switched them. And then I walked over and saw a scale on my way out. So I just tucked it up under my shirt, and literally just poking out the sides of my shirt. It was wider than I was. I just put my arms over it, started walking out the door, and this big old dude came running around, put his hands up, and I said, yep, you're right, man. Here you go. And just handed it to him immediately. He's like, come on, let's go in here. He went there, he called the cops and went to jail.
And so you stayed in there for a couple of hours before somebody come bonded you out? Or?
Nobody bonded me. No, they 8 hours. It was. I was in there for 8 hours. It felt like a month, and I was just, and again, I started detoxing, and I was just on all these drugs and meth, and I was banging on the walls in there, like telling them that I should be out by now, like an hour in. And I'm pretty sure that's why I ended up staying for 8. I probably would have been out in a couple of hours. But
did anybody know you were there?
Not for the first 5 or 6 hours, and then they let me call somebody, and so I called my brother. I actually did try and call my wife. They still don't believe I tried to call my wife first, but because she wasn't going to be real excited to hear from me. But I tried her once, and the phone wouldn't go through. So I called my brother, and he ended up coming to pick me up.
And what was his first words when you got out into his car? He
wasn't surprised. He's like, I think he asked me if I'd talked to Rebecca yet. And I said, nope, nope. Let's just take me home, dude. I'll talk to her when I get there.
Yeah. You said, how about we just act like this didn't happen?
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what it was, man. Like he knew how bad off I was. And he's like, dude, have you talked to Rebecca? Have you talked to mom and dad? And I said, no, let's just take me home. It's been a long night. I'm gonna go to sleep, and then we'll deal with this tomorrow. Put it off.
So if you didn't have that moment where you said, okay, I've got to get help, what put you in motion to go to the ranch?
Getting arrested. So when I got arrested, my mom and dad and Rebecca. And
this is the Coles incident.
Yeah. It's the only time I've ever been to jail. So they started looking around and found the ranch for me. And my mom said that she saw. She always kind of looks on the bright side when it comes to me. Anyway, and she said that she saw this as a cry for help, and so.
Which, looking back, it was.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, honestly, man, I was somewhat relieved to just be taken out, because I mean, I was spiraling. I didn't know where I was going to land, and it just felt good for somebody else to kind of take control for a minute, and get it out of my hands. But yeah, so they found the ranch, and when I got out of jail, they're like, "We're going up here. You're interviewing there, and that's it. That's what's happening. Or Rebecca's leaving. She's taking the kids with her, and I lose what little I've been able to hold on to up at this point."
And you believe that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, she was about gone anyway. She was so sick of it. And, she is, like I said, it was just the kids. We had 18-month-old kids at home, and I actually was at home all the time when I was supposed to be. I did most of my running around during the day, from 8 to 5 when I was supposed to be working, but I was usually at home with the kids, and by then I'd found something for the night, and I could actually be there with, take care of the kids and help with them. But, twins is a big deal, and thinking you're going to leave and have to be a single mom's really difficult decision. So I was able to kind of, I guess, play on that fear of hers and keep her around. And
So did you have the fear of people, just not just your wife, but people just writing you off and saying, well, we just aren't going to put up with him anymore, whether it be family or your mom or dad or close friends that you may have had?
Not so much my parents, man. This was when they realized that when I got arrested was the moment that they realized how bad it was. I had been pretty good, even though I'd steal some stuff and pawn their stuff, and I'd always get it back and make some excuses about how I need some money for it. And they just wanted to believe it so bad. They just didn't want to believe what was really happening. So that's the moment I got arrested, was when they realized, well, this is much worse than we're letting ourselves believe.
It was probably way worse than what they were letting themselves believe.
Yeah, it was weird. They had no idea. They had no idea I'd been using needles, and I'd been doing that for probably 8 years at that point. And I mean, every kind of drug you imagine, yeah, they had no idea how bad it was.
So Renewal Ranch, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't do any type of medical detox. You're just thrown in there.
Right.
So what was that detox like for you?
35 days. I was sick for 35 days. I didn't sleep the first 9 days I was there. And typically they want you to go somewhere and get detox. Like you can go to the hospital and get detox for a few days and whatever before you go. But I just kept using up until the day. Actually, the second day I was there was the first day I didn't use because I took some with me. But yeah, I went up there, and of course I'd been taking Suboxone too, going to the doctor for Suboxone. Usually I would just get the Suboxone and trade that for the drugs that I wanted. And so, but I would keep some for the days that I couldn't find anything. They did help, but Suboxone gets in your bones, and that stuff stays in your system for a long time. So that's what drew it out for so long. But, for the first 2 weeks I was really sick, throwing up and not sleeping. And it was bad. And honestly, physically, it was probably the worst that it's ever been. But in my head, it wasn't, because I knew that it was actually going to end this time, that I was going to get past this. And just knowing that, without the option of going and getting a fix and making it last longer now, just knowing that this would actually end, man, it's so peaceful. Just knowing that, all right, finally it's actually going to end now.
And having a support system there that had been through that kind of hell that you were dealing with right then.
Yeah, you can talk to anybody there, and they have your exact story. So like they've been there, and hey, look at me, and I'm better now. You will get better.
Now, 35 days, that kind of seems like a long time for symptoms to stop from the DTs.
Yeah,
is that normal?
Methadone and Suboxone. That's the stuff that gets in your bones. That's the stuff that makes your DTs last forever. Opiate, if I was just on regular opiates, like oxycodone, it probably lasted 2 weeks. I mean, I would have probably been kind of fatigued for, about a month, but the nausea and just sweats and the just crazy fatigue and all this, that probably wouldn't last more than 2 weeks.
Gotcha. So at the ranch, of course, it's a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a Bible study every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then is it like the first 6 months you're just in this intense therapy, and then after that they start putting you to work somewhere where you're kind of integrated back into society, I guess would be the best way to say?
Yeah, pretty much. So the first 6 months you're on campus there, and Monday through Wednesday, you got about 15 different pastors that come and teach an hour-long class. So you're in class from 8
a pastor preached just an hour?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, yeah, they give them a book to teach out of.
They weren't Baptists then.
Right, yeah. Absolutely not. No, they wouldn't allow those at the ranch. But yeah, so they would come and they would teach from 8 to 5 Monday through Wednesday. And then on Thursdays, we would go serve. So they would have just these community projects. We'd go mow people's yards or all kinds of stuff. And so they would send groups out to all the guys out to go serve the community on Thursdays and Fridays. Saturdays, we would have their chapel service, and then our family could come to chapel service and hang out with us for a few hours afterwards. And then Sundays, we would go to different churches every Sunday. We would do the service at the church. It's cardboard testimonies, and somebody would give their full testimony. And that was a average week at the ranch for the first 6 months. That's exactly what you do. After that, they moved into some apartments, and you all stay in the same apartments, but you can get your car back, you get a job, and you have a curfew every night, and you come back, you have Bible study twice a week, a check-in once a week. So yeah, lots of accountability, random drug tests, things like that. But you're kind of getting slowly dipped back into the pool.
But it is very strict. Once again, you don't break curfew.
Right.
You don't. But then the consequence of that is what if you were to break curfew?
I mean, like I said, they're pretty strict, man. You don't get a whole lot of second chances to not get kicked out. You do something wrong like that, because there's the thought is, and it's accurate, that there's somebody out there dying to get a bed right now.
Yeah.
And so if you're not gonna go by the rules, if you don't mean this, then we got to give it to somebody else.
Right. Because their waiting list right now is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. So you get through that 6-month program, you get through the second 6-month program, and then how does that work though, now that you're in an apartment with others and you're married and you have kids?
So yeah, let me correct what I said. If you're not married with kids, you move into the apartment and then you do all that. If you have a family, then you move back home and do your 6 months there. But I still had to come back for Bible studies twice a week, for check-in once a week.
Which was like a 45-minute drive.
Yeah,
for you.
Yeah. From Little Rock to Conway, yeah, which I was fine with, man. I loved it. I would have gone every night if they would have told me to, because that's what felt like home. It is weird going back home and trying to get back into after 6 months of not being there, especially if my kids are 2 years old now, and, all my wife has known was our history together. And so, it's going to be tough on her too, to kind of reacclimate and learn if she can really trust me, if I'm being honest anymore, what's going on, which is totally understandable. So it's pretty awkward for the first month or so getting back into it, but I loved that I could go back to the ranch for a Bible study whenever I was having trouble, just acclimating to my new life. I have people I can go talk to, counselors and staff members that I could sit down and talk to.
People that you knew would understand your story, and that had walked with you, not just some random therapist that answered an 800 number somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what's missing from a lot of our rehabs, is that personal touch, that you're not just some chart walking around out there that has a number assigned to you.
Right.
And that's what I really, really value about Renewal Ranch, is that you aren't just a number, you're an individual.
Right.
So you mentioned reacclimating in your home. Were there times where you felt like your wife would question your authenticity? And when that happened, did you react with compassion, or were there times that it just really aggravated you, that you couldn't believe, here I've been gone 6 months and you don't trust me after all this?
Right. Yeah. No, I was completely prepared for a lack of trust to start with. After a few months, of like, look, who I am now. This is how it's going now. She could always spot my pupils from across the room. Whenever I was in my addiction, I'd walk in the house and she could see that my pupils were pinpoint. And so, after a few months, I'd come in and after being clean and living there for a few months, I'd come in and she's like, let me see your eyes. And that was always, let me see your eyes. Let me see your eyes. Mm-hmm. And I always knew I was in trouble then. And so, but I'd made that, kind of promise to myself that, I'm going to understand this, because good Lord, the hell I've put this girl through, so I'm going to understand. I'm going to be consistently understanding as long as it needs to be. And so, I think she would even say I did, pretty well with that.
And the fact that she did stay.
Yeah, exactly. When she should have been gone
a lot of
1,000
women that
times.
would do that.
Yeah. She should have been gone a lot, man. But she stayed, and so, yeah.
So how do you deal with, and I'm going to just assume textbook, how do you deal with the urges today after recovery?
I don't have any anymore. I mean, I never. I had a few, obviously for the first 6 months, it's tough, man. You're retraining your brain, and the physical symptoms are still there. They'll kick in every once in a while, and you'll get the itch. But it's easy there, because you've got guys, especially at the ranch, even if you took off running, it's going to be a long time where you get anywhere in public.
Because it really is out in the middle of nowhere.
It's in the middle of nowhere, yeah. And same thing for John 3:16. It's out there in Batesville, just out in the middle. I mean, you'd be gone for days on foot trying to get to a payphone or something.
What's that?
Yeah, trying to get to Walmart, use their phone. It was easy the first 6 months, hard the first 6 months. It got easier after that. But man, after a year of it, after a year and a half, I've never even considered it. It is. I've been given a new life. And when I think back on that, it's like looking back on somebody else's life. It's insane. The stuff that I would think, the stuff that I would do, it's insane. I can't believe that was me that did all that.
Mm-hmm. Could you come to terms with that wasn't you that did all of that?
Yeah. I mean, you tell yourself a lot of stuff, but of course I'm ashamed of some of the things I did, but I don't hold on to it anymore. What's the point of that? You're wasting a lot of energy and time, and I've been forgiven. My family's forgiven me. So I'm just not going to hold on to it anymore.
Gotcha. So you've been sober, did you say 4?
It'll be 4 years on July 18th.
In that 4 years of sobriety, what would happen if tomorrow, and I don't know that you still play basketball.
Mm-hmm. Played last night.
So what would happen if that same type of injury took place and now you're going into a surgery, knowing your past? How do you deal with that as a person who is sober?
Ibuprofen. That's it. I've had several injuries. Actually, I think God gave me an injury while I was at the ranch to kind of test my resolve. And I was playing volleyball and rolled an ankle and limped on it for a few days. And somehow, while I was limping on my ankle, I guess the muscle behind my pelvis just dissolved, and I had this hip dysplasia kind of thing that started popping. My hip started popping out and laying on my sciatic nerve, and I had to miss class, just go lay on my back in class, and it hurt. And I thought I'd herniated a disc again. And I mean, are you kidding? Like, I finally get clean, and now I'm going to have this pain to deal with. But even then, man, like 4 months in, I was like, well, give me some ibuprofen. I'm not going back, man. Mm-hmm. I'm not going back. And so if I did, I cut my hand open actually playing basketball and ended up with 12 stitches right here.
I'm beginning to think sports in general is just not a good idea.
Yeah. I literally pray every time I play, like just not a terrible injury tonight. Like, it's just a small one's fine. But yeah, I went up there. There's tin sheathing behind the basketball goal, and there's this little piece of metal sticking out. So whenever I went up for the layup, I slammed up against the wall, slammed my hand against it, and just cut my hand wide open. So anyway, I went to the doctor and to get it stitched up, and they stitched it up and just kind of ushered me out. And I was like, y'all aren't going to offer me painkillers. This is really bad. And like, sorry. We're like, no, I haven't had the chance to turn down painkillers yet. And I was really excited to come in, and you guys offered me some painkillers. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I told her that. We started talking, and she was telling me about her son is having issues right now with addiction. Mm-hmm. And so we started talking about the ranch, and she's working right now to get him in the ranch.
Great.
Which is another reason that I'm not holding on to that shame. It's the reason I'm here today. Like, I will talk about this all the time to anybody who wants to listen, because I've been delivered from this, and I need other people to know the story so that they know that there is a way out.
Right. I say often, everybody has a chapter in their book that they don't want read out loud, but we really can't start to begin that healing process until it's at least read out loud in a therapy office.
Right.
And once we get to the point of where we can tell our story, I don't think that true, authentic healing comes to the point of where I'm not ashamed anymore. And I asked you the question of, can you come to the resolve that wasn't Neil? And that is, in saying that, who you are today is Neil. Mm-hmm. That's who your parents knew you growing up, was Neil. Those things that you did outside within addiction really isn't who you are. That's who the addiction morphed you into. Yeah. And if we look at our story like that, it's easier to tell, because we can say, hey, I did those things, but that's not who I am. Right. And in that, there's a lot of comfort there. So if you could tell anybody struggling with an addiction today anything, what would it be?
To be honest about it. And that's the biggest thing that's going to keep them there, is that shame and hiding that shame and hiding what they're doing. I mean, listen, there's really no rock bottom that's the same for anybody. So unfortunately, especially with addiction, especially with opiates, hitting rock bottom takes not only a lot longer than we like, but a lot more times than we would like. We're going to hit it hundreds and hundreds of times, not just, more times than we would like, but obviously of people who love us. But man, it's just, there will be a time when you hit rock bottom and you realize like how serious this is, and just telling somebody, just because I never told anybody until I got arrested. I wasn't planning on telling anybody that, that cared about me, that loved me, that would have done something about it. But, just opening up and saying that, look, I can't do this by myself. I can't do it. And that's the first step, because if you're not honest with somebody else, you're never going to be honest with yourself about it. So just get it out there.
And one thing I heard you say was you were in control.
Mm.
So if you had it all under control, what was the point of having to tell anybody else?
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Doc Brian, and we thank you for joining us here today on Doc Talks. And now as we go into the second part of this, of Doc Talks DX, you'll find that episode on Patreon. Neil, I'm thankful that you're here. I'm thankful that you do and are able to tell your story. So thank you for being here with us. If it's okay with you, in the description of this podcast, I'm going to put Renewal Ranch, list them as a resource,
please.
And the National Narcotics Hotline, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, all of that kind of works together. So if they wanted to find Neil Gray, where would they look? I mean, I could give them your home address.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to give the address, we just bought a house here, so I can give you my old address. I'm at Regeneration. New Life Church has a recovery ministry that we just launched a couple of years ago at the Greater Little Rock campus in Maumelle. So I'm there every Thursday night. I get to speak there every once in a while, and so that's one of the ministries I work with. I work with the M18 recovery ministry. I say I work with them, and I hang out with them. Like I said, these places feel like home to me. And so when there's people with a common struggle that are trying to do better with their lives, and they're hanging around like-minded people, I'm trying to get in the middle of that. And so M18 recovery is a big part of my life and my days. I'm at the ranch as often as I can be. So, I mean, just in recovery circles, man, it's amazing how many people you start to meet when you're in recovery. And as long as I avoided it, man, like most of my closest friends now are, in recovery, and they're part of these ministries or run these ministries. And that's kind of the crowds that I run in.
Gotcha. Of course, you can find you on Facebook, and I think you're on Instagram too.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah. I've posted like one or two things on Instagram. So
we'll put those social media links
also
in this description. Of course, as I said, Doc Brian here. You can find me at thedocbrian.com. On Instagram, _doc_Brian. At the bottom of my website, The Doc Brian, there's a social media bar there with all of my social media links. Once again, thank you for listening to Doc Talks today. Doc Talks is on the Be Frank Network. You can find all of our podcasts there at BeFrankNetwork.com. Once again, thank you for being here with us. Make sure to follow us over to Doc Talks DX on Patreon. And thank you for listening, Neil. Once again, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Doc.